Here's another show you can enjoy in the True Story FM family of entertainment podcasts.
What's up, Supernatural superfans? I'm Chrissy Lenz.
And I'm Nate McWhorter.
And we're the host of
Gank That Drink,
a supernatural drinking game podcast.
It's the podcast where we make up drinking game rules for a favorite episode of our favorite show, Supernatural.
We recap the episode for you and let you know how all the rules played out.
Then we let you know the drinking game rules for the next episode, so you can play along.
Plus, members get every episode early and ad-free.
With some extra bonus content chit-chat at the end of each episode as a member exclusive.
So download Gank That Drink, a supernatural drinking game podcast wherever the finest podcasts are available.
And or become a member at truestory.fm/gankthatdrink.
And when you're out there in the world saving people and hunting things...
You know, the family business.
Keep the Gank That Drink motto in mind. Be excellent to each other and party on.
Party on, dudes.
Ever wonder where the devil got his horns?
How about those cloven hooves?
Or that pitchfork?
Wasn't he an angel?
No, he was a snake.
No, he's the great red dragon.
No, he's the beast.
He's the prince of this world.
Prince of darkness.
Well, he's the prince of darkness.
Good morning, star lovelies. One of my names is Lester Ryan Clark.
And I sometimes go by Keenan Diaz.
And we're the hosts of the brand new podcast, The Devil's Details. What comes to mind when I say Lucifer?
How about Satan?
What about just the devil? How did the big bad of the Western world end up with so many faces? Join us as we dig up, decipher, and deconstruct the devil's many forms throughout history.
Take a guided tour with Dante through the 9 circles of hell.
Or revisit Satan's angsty bad boy years in Paradise Lost.
Learn the ins and outs of a Faustian contract.
Easier than a 1099, but with a hell of a lot more fine print.
Slither on over to The Devil's Details on True Story FM and join us in the diabolic discussion.
Love and hisses. Mwah! Didn't Al Pacino play him in a movie?
Are you sure that wasn't Robert De
I could
Niro?
have sworn it was Tim Curry.
That was Elizabeth
Didn't
Hurley.
he go down to Georgia at some point?
I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to The Next Reel. When the movie ends,
Our conversation begins.
Killer Klowns from Outer Space is over. What are you going to do with those pies, boys?
It was a night like any other night. Then something happened.
You see that?
Something different.
It's no shooting star.
Why here? Why now? Why clowns? They've been knocking them dead all over the universe.
What are you gonna do? Knock my block off?
Soon they'll be doing it at a theater near you.
Killer Klowns from outer space.
Killer Klowns from Outer Space. What the hell again? What are we doing?
This is part of our One and Done series, directed by Stephen Chiodo, who is one of the Chiodo Brothers. You have Charles, Edward, and Stephen Chiodo, and they were a special effects house, the Chiodo Brothers. They did a lot of effects in the early 80s. Things like Flicks is where they started, but then Critters is a big one that came out right before this, and that was something that I was very fond of. I loved those Critters movies, man. Those things I watched a lot in the 80s. I had so much fun with those. They did some work on Fairy Tale Theater. They did the RoboCop. They did the 6000 SUX commercial in the RoboCop film. They worked on UHF. They worked on Monsters and Ernest Scared Stupid. So they were very into this period in the 80s and 90s that was practical effects and these sorts of fun creature effects. Things obviously shifted a lot with the other, as CG came in and everything. And then they started from there doing things like they were puppet supervisors on Team America World Police. And as things have shifted a little bit in the world where people really kind of find that they still can enjoy live action real effects. They've done things like Marcel the Shell with shoes on, working on the stop motion animation for that film. So they're definitely still in the industry trying to figure out how to do stuff as real as possible as things have shifted. But yeah, this was their opportunity to make a feature film, putting to work some of the designs that they had with these fantastic clown costumes. And it is our one and done, because the Chiodo Brothers, and specifically Stephen Chiodo, who directed this, have never directed something since.
Really?
Now you say
Now-
that. I'm getting a sense that you may not have enjoyed your experience with this.
Well, that, my friend, would be a setup, because I had a blast with this movie. I had a blast. It is
So
a
you were
movie-
setting me up.
I was setting you up.
With your,
It is-
really?
Yeah. Yeah. Sidelong glances. Yeah.
I see how it is.
Dozing off a little bit when you started to talk. Yeah, that was all me
Wow.
setting you up. I had an absolute blast with this movie. Why? I'll tell you. Because it knew exactly what it was from the moment the film starts. It knows what it is. And the clowns look amazing. The clown design, I cannot get enough of the clowns. Every one of them is just different enough. And I mean, it was fantastic. Fantastic. So, their pedigree working in this territory beyond like making feature films, it really, I mean, they put all of their work. This is a reel for them. They put their work on screen, and it was fun. You could tell these are people who had an absolute blast making movies. And that was it.
That is what I got out of it too. Like, I had so much fun watching this film. And as I was watching this, I was like, why have they not been given the chance to direct? I know that we'll talk about the potential sequel that's still in talks about this, but it's like people who are able to make something that's just incredibly fun. And it's just like the sheer joy of what you can do with film and these characters. Like, they were having a blast, and I can't imagine that it's that hard to say, here's some money, go make another one, because it was fun the first time. Give us some more.
God, it really was. So here's what I love about it. Let me begin my
Please.
Litigating this movie. One, they twisted all the clown tropes, right? They they acknowledge everything that we are scared of about clowns and treat them as if those tropes are actually terrifying, all the way down to the balloon animal hunting dog that they put on a leash and run around chasing the kids. It is fantastic that their blatant use of these clown tropes and these bright colors and the silly clown antics and all the way to the clown car, they made these things sinister because they put us in a space where we think we're safe because they're clowns, because it's a fun tent, and made them horrible and put us in a space of fear. And that subversion is what actually makes things scary, when you think you're okay and you're not okay. And I think they did a fantastic job at that.
And a lot of surprises. Like, that was the thing. Like, they kept giving us, I mean, it does get to a point where it's like, okay, so now we're going to see a different clown with a different civilian in town who also is going to get killed by a clown, but how are they going to kill him this time? And that, I think, for me, was the joy in watching this, because they keep showing up at different places, and it's always a different method of killing them. I mean, they do have the gun, which they use to blast them and turn them and like cocoonify them in their cotton candy cocoons.
Yes.
But largely, it's all of these other things, like, I'm going to do shadow puppets on the wall, and I'm going to use my hands and make all these fantastic shapes and things.
That's a signature scene for me. The shadow puppet, where the shadow puppet turns into a shadow puppet T-Rex and actually eats real human beings, is amazing. Talk about subversion of expectations. Like, it just plays. It just plays.
And likewise, when Debbie goes home and she's freaking out because all the little popcorn seedlings, I guess I'll just call them, have blossomed and have turned into like little clown head babies that are kind of like
tentacles.
these creepy Jack-in-the-Box things that are just terrifying. And she goes to, the clowns come to her house, and she's going to try jumping out the window. She opens the window, and it's like what you see in like Dumbo, where you got the clowns holding the fireman's, I don't know, net sort of thing, whatever you call those things, that circus clowns would often do. And then they end up with a gag because of that. But you've got like that. And of course, that just kind of continues the evolution. And then they, of course, catch her and put her in a big balloon. So it just keeps going. And every one of them is just a delight to see, because it's like, how are they going to use this here? You know, like, I mean, the pie one that you opened with.
Yes.
There's another great one.
Okay, so the pie one is fantastic because, and I think this gets to my next question for you, and we could take it as a bit of a sidebar, but horror comedy is obviously tricky to pull off. And there are some great films in the oeuvre of horror comedy that work really, really well. This movie, because it's already so goofy in tone and tenor, I wonder how well you think the horror comedy part lives up to our expectations. The pie scene is a great one because they throw all the pies at the guy, and only later we see the pile of stuff, of goo that was in the pie we assume was pie filling. It turns out it's some sort of acidic decomposing agent, and you see the skeletal arm of the guy hanging out of the pie goo, which is legitimately gross. There are some legitimately gross sequences when they pull the cotton candy off of the human faces in the actual tent ship. Those things I think are fun and also gross. So what's your sense of the horror comedy balance?
This film, it never quite gets all the way to horror. But it's kind of in the sense of horror of a lot of creature features, where it's like the creatures themselves might be terrifying and horrific, and to just the fact that we have them here in the film, it lends itself to the horror genre, right? I mean, these are clowns that are putting people into cotton candy sacks, essentially, that decompose their bodies so the clowns can slurp their digested fluids up like a soda pop. Yeah, it's horrifying. And we kind of get this sense that these clowns are essentially just aliens, and that's what they're do. They came to Earth so that they could feed on us, is what we really are getting out of this film. They're catching people in these cocoon sacks. They've filled their ship with it, and then they pop in whenever they need a little sustenance and drink up the person's gooey insides.
And that's what makes it so funny, that these guys came up with a concept where they took like real human clowns, but what if all the clowns were actually aliens, and the aliens
that makeup
just
doesn't wash off?
No, right. It just happens to be the exact same as our clowns. Like, that's just the luck of evolution.
Yeah.
That these alien clowns also happen to fly around in a giant tent-shaped spaceship. It's straight up like brilliant in its dumbness. Like, it's great.
Oh, it's perfect. It's perfect. Like you mentioned, that the balloon dog they've got, which can sniff them out. The popcorn gun was another fantastic bit. Like, as these people escape, this clown pulls out this ridiculous bazooka type of gun that has this huge opening at the end, and he blasts it at them, and it shoots popcorn at them, which, as I already mentioned, is kind of what their little seedlings are, and that's how they spread themselves out, and it's fascinating the way that they crafted this world that is so perfectly clowny.
So, what does the movie say about what essentially is a 1950s era B movie, right? What does this movie say about small town America under siege, Andy? If you were a Fox News reporter, what would you be saying right now?
Well, I mean, it's interesting that you're looking at it that way, because there's definitely this 50s vibe to this sort of creature feature sort of film that we have here. I mean, you think of something like The Blob, which, you know, a giant blob of goo that's rolling around and digesting people. You can say that this film is very much following that sort of line, and some people are going to buy into it and some don't. In this particular case, we have the young trio at the core of the film who are our heroes, and the old grumpy guy who works at the sheriff's office, who 100% does not want to buy into any of this nonsense. And of course, he ends up getting taken down himself by the clowns.
What does he say? Like, put your wife in a balloon. You don't need the police. You need a psychiatrist. Hang up.
Yeah, right.
Brilliant.
Yeah, just so, and having John Vernon play that role is just like, God, he is just so perfect. I mean, I know we talked about him as kind of a villainous character in one of our, I think that was the Outlaw Josie Wales, And like, he's so great as those sorts of villains, but here he is just like totally working as the evil human of the town who's just like refuses to acknowledge anything that's going on, even to the point where when the film opens, he is arrested two guys who are just out having fun, not doing really anything, and he's arrested them, put them in a cell. Like, he is like just the worst. And it's like crafting this sense of this small town where the old people don't understand anymore, and it's the young people who are going to be able to rise up and save it. And that's, I guess, kind of the crux of it.
That's really, I mean, that's a great point, right? It's the you just set up the authority figures are incompetent, kids are the saviors tropes. And I wonder why that works so effectively. Like, what is this shining a spotlight on right now? Because the movie itself is so absurd that it really highlights that the teenagers have a superpower, which is being attuned to weirdness in a way that adults and adults in authority in particular cannot see, right? That because the kids have no, blind faith. They don't have any blind faith in authority, and they don't trust authority. They absolutely are able to see when things go sideways and see through the veil.
Which, is a total trope. Like, that's an absolute trope. The young people get it, but the old people don't, right?
Yes.
I wonder, I haven't searched it, but I wonder if there's something on TV tropes that this falls into, because it's a perfect example of that sort of trope.
We both should have done that on TV tropes first, because I imagine that page, just loading that page for this movie would break the internet.
There are a lot. I'm looking right now, and it is loaded with tropes. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what have we missed?
Well, we didn't talk about the Achilles heel trope. If you destroy the clown's nose, it kills them instantly.
Oh my God, that was so good. Even the big boss, boss has a nose that can be popped.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Those perfect. Just perfect. One thing that I want to talk about as we're talking about kind of like the themes of the story and everything in this really goofy movie is the fact that, we've already talked about the young people kind of being the saviors, but at the same time, there's this incredibly interesting element that they do with this film where you've got this trio of heroes, but it's primarily you've got the hero and his girlfriend, Mike Tobacco and Debbie Stone, as the two lovers that we first meet on Lover's Lane, one of the couples up there, but also the young cop, and that's Dave, who is Debbie's ex. And so we're introduced to this interesting three characters who have this sense of backstory and conflict built in, because Debbie is now with Mike, and Mike feels threatened by Dave, and Dave still likes Debbie. And so we've got this trio that it's fascinating to have that as, I mean, I shouldn't say it's fascinating, but I suppose it works to set up our story where we have something like this. But what was fascinating to me about it is time and time again, if they had any of these issues arise, they were logical in their understanding that, we need to put this aside because there are clowns out there killing people, and we need to figure out what's going on.
Yeah. Testosterone must befriend testosterone, right? Like, that's what they're looking like, these hyped caricatures of these two young men, but also the fact that she was dating a cop. Like, are we how old do you think they are supposed to be?
I was trying to figure that out. Like, are they college kids going to Lover's Lane?
Yeah.
Are they still high school kids? And he's like a brand new on the force.
He could be a young officer, but what does that make him? 24?
Like, I like if you go into police training, I can't imagine it's like a 4-year program like college. So he could be a young 2021 sort of thing,
I'm checking it out right now. Real-time research.
Then you'll have to retroactively check to find out how did that affect things in 1988?
So according to the law in Oregon, you have to be 21 years of age by the first day of employment. Okay. So that's something. Now, if we look at the cast. So Debbie was 25. Dave was 28. Mike was 26 when they made this movie.
Yeah.
And do you think they wanted us to believe they were, 19 and 23 maybe?
I mean, if it's 19, then it's definitely college. I mean, I guess college students could still be going to Lover's Lane and stuff. So that definitely makes more sense, and it makes it more comfortable to have it being college kids. And perhaps she's going to a local school, so because I don't know, that house didn't feel like her house. It felt like she was like living at home with her parents. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, this is a real continuity problem. I think that I don't know if we're equipped to solve it, but it was a quibble.
But I think it's fine. If they're college kids and he's just a little older, then I think that it works. I think
like if he was a senior when they were sophomores, like they're a couple of years off, and then he graduates, goes to become a police officer, and now they're seniors.
Yeah.
In college. So they're 21 or so.
Right. It still makes me question why she's still living at home, but
But really, it was just setting us up for this generation where the kids never leave.
That's true.
So
you just can't get them out.
You cannot get them out. They're never leaving.
Yeah.
Sorry.
How funny.
All right. It's not funny. Ask me how I know.
Spoken with experience. Yeah. But I mean, it also, this speaks to kind of that college thing, because Mike's best friends, the Terenzi brothers, Rich and Paul, they've got their own business. They're ice creams. You've got an ice cream truck with a giant clown on top, which is perfect for this film. And so I guess it would make sense. Like maybe they didn't go off to school. They just started figuring out their own stuff so they could start their own business. And here they are with this clown truck. So that would make sense then that they're all that age. So now I'm buying into all of this a lot more.
I'm glad. I mean, it feels more natural just hearing you talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah. What did you think of the Terenzi brothers?
They weren't in it enough, right? Like I felt like we got a couple of key moments with them. We got to meet them and see how goofy they are in their thing. And then they kind of go away for a long time. And then they sort of save the day. Accidental saviors, right? That should be a TV trope. I'm sure it's in there somewhere. And
Probably.
I thought they were funny and I liked them. And I liked having their truck all over the place. I thought that was great. And I love that they kept talking about all the other, whose idea it was to open the ice cream truck as a way to meet girls,
right?
Which is just such a boneheaded idea.
Yeah, right. And it was funny that the first time that we see them, they decide to drive up to Lover's Lane at night to try selling ice cream to all the lovers.
Amazing.
And their pitch when they were talking to them all, like trying to get them to take a break from all of their making out and sex and everything else they were doing, like that was so funny. Like that whole thing just made me laugh out loud. The way that those two,
funny. Yeah, that was an awesome way to open the movie. Like, incredible.
Yeah, they're just a riot. And I mean, in the scope of this sort of story, it needs to put characters in particular places, right? Like we need characters at Lover's Lane so they can see this spaceship crash, and they of course think it's like a meteor or something else like that. We've got the old man who's up there too, who sees it. So we're putting these different people in spots so they can see these different things happening, and that sets up the whole story because the old man goes out there to figure out what's going on. This is Farmer Gene Green, played by Royal Dano, who is one of those perennial character actors who always is great as this sort of guy who's just watching these, sitting out on his porch with his old dog watching a spacecraft crash in his backyard.
Do you know how many Stephen King films Royal Dano has been in?
Oh, that's a good question. It's funny because I don't think about him in Stephen King. I always think about him in Westerns because he's kind of got that personality that plays so well in those sorts of things.
I know. I just was scrolling his credits, and I've got the top one in 1993 was The Dark Half, and that got me thinking he would be perfect for every Stephen King movie.
Which was his last film.
His last
right. film role, yeah. Which is sad. He was in Something Wicked This Way Comes, which isn't Stephen King, but certainly fits the vibe with this. This might be the only one that he was in.
Interesting.
What's just an interesting side note about him is that his voice was Abraham Lincoln in the Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln animatronic performance at World's Fair, and then went on to be in the Hall of Presidents.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
No, it's such a fun actor to watch. I always enjoy watching him pop up in these things. And just in this period, Killer Klowns from Outer Space, Ghoulies 2, Spaced Invaders. Like, he did all three of those films like back to back in the late 80s. That's just hilarious.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So busy.
Yeah, very busy. Okay, so we've talked a lot about the people. So we've got the trio, Mike, Debbie, and Dave, played by Grant Kramer, Suzanne Snyder, and John Allen Nelson. Anything you want to say about any of them? How did they play for you?
John Allen Nelson is interesting only because, like, I know more of him. Like, I've seen him in more stuff. Like, I've seen him in Crazy Ex-Girlfriend and in 24 and Castle. Like, he's a face that I know better and can place better. The other I found interesting, Grant Kramer, I had seen him before and I could not place it until I looked at his credits and saw that his most recent film was Willy's Wonderland with Nicolas Cage. That's pretty much all I know of him.
Yeah, I mean, there were films that he was in the 80s, like Hard Bodies that I saw. That was one of those HBO late night movies that I snuck in while my dad was sleeping. And then, Willy's Wonderland, which he starred in and produced. Yeah.
He was in it as Jerry Wallace.
Right. So I've seen him in stuff, but he really shifted his career in the early aughts and started working as an executive in production. And that's really kind of primarily what he's doing now, is working as an EP or producer on projects. And, I think in the industry, I think some people go that way where they start shifting into these other things when you're just like not necessarily getting the roles or something,
He was in The Young and the Restless in 1985-86. That was kind of a sweet spot for me watching soaps.
I might have watched, that was my soap, so I might have watched some of him in that window as well.
He was the psychotic stalker, Sean Garrett. So
there's always one of those.
Yep.
Always.
Yep.
Suzanne Snyder was another one who was just in a lot of these sorts of films that I've seen her in, but I probably didn't notice her because, like, The Last Starfighter, I watched that a bazillion times when I was a kid, but she was a cheerleader. So, like, okay, may not have seen that. Remo Williams, The Adventure Begins, another film I watched a lot as a kid. She was a nurse in a soap opera. So, okay, may not have stuck out. But, she did a lot of film and TV through the 80s and 90s. And then it really seems that she's kind of, I don't know if it's, just changes in her life, but she kind of shifted gears and has largely moved out of the industry after 1999. Yeah.
Well, I thought she was great for what the movie is. Like, everyone in here understood the assignment.
Yeah.
Like, they got it. It's a daffy movie, and they played it just right. The fact that I thought it was delightful that she gets put into a giant balloon and not a cotton candy, because why would you take the leading lady and goo her up with a bunch of cotton candy? Like, you got to have another vehicle for that.
It did make you wonder, what were they doing with the people who they put into balloons? Because we know she wasn't the first one. There was, as you said, the guy who called in and ended up talking to John Vernon, who's like, my wife's in a balloon.
Yeah, who knows? Because they didn't put a straw in them. They would have popped.
But they put them in the same room. So it does make me wonder.
Yeah, like, were they like egg sacs? Were they breeding them?
Yeah.
They were breeders.
Ooh.
Yeah, I know.
Ooh. Do they have their own version of a face hugger that would, like, do something to them that, like, all the popcorn comes out of those people in the balloons?
So what else goes on a clown face but a giant life-sucking nose? And when you pull the nose off, it's got this tendril that goes inside your nasal cavity and down your throat. It's awful.
Exactly what it is. Oh,
this is
man.
we are in line. Actually, we didn't tell you guys this, but we are in line to do a remake of this movie. We're going to dress it up.
So fantastic.
Yeah.
And then Charles Chiodo, one of the Chiodo brothers, he played Jojo the Clownzilla, who was the big clown that we had at the end, the one that they were all waiting for. When they finally get to that room, I don't know. You wonder, like, what do they use this room for regularly on the spaceship? I wasn't exactly sure, but in the scope of the film, yeah, it was fine.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. God, this movie is bonkers.
It had a number of those rooms because before that they go through the room that has the tiny doors and they keep getting smaller and smaller and smaller. It's like, is this what did the clowns use that for when they're flying around the universe?
I kept thinking about that, like especially they get to the other side and they've only closed one door. Just felt like because it's impossible to close all the door. You can't close the outside door without closing the door inside. So the doors could only be closed from the other side. Not a great escape room.
Oh man, so funny.
Yeah, this movie is crazy.
So Charles Chiodo, he wore a rubber suit in that bit. And what's interesting about this film, considering the effects pedigree that the Chiodo brothers had, they actually did not do the work on this as far as they designed the clowns themselves. They came up with the designs, but they actually had a different company do all of the effects work because they needed to focus strictly on directing and producing. And I thought that was pretty smart. Because they still had a hand in the design and everything, so it allowed it to still be theirs, you know?
Yeah, right. And the fact that they committed to I don't want to say committed to because this is not necessarily a giant CG effects movie or period really, but they could have really janked it up with some early CG. And I think this movie ends up becoming kind of a historical love letter to what you can do with practical effects and make things really beautiful. So I can't underscore this. The clown faces are great.
Yeah,
they're just great.
Yeah, they're just fantastic. And they were like the whole Clownzilla, Jojo the Clownzilla, was actually going to be stop motion animation, but they decided to do it with Charles inside the suit. And then they used miniatures. And the Chiodo brothers, that was one thing that they did work on, is they created the miniatures for that final sequence so that they could kind of make Jojo look so big. And it played. I mean, all of that played. I'm fine with the era, this period when they were doing these different sorts of model work where you'd have these giant things, and nothing in it stood out as bad effects work.
No, for sure.
Yeah, because like sometimes, even in like some of the Star Trek films, you can still kind of see the lines around the ships and stuff, you know?
I mean, you mentioned The Last Starfighter. Some janky effects work right there.
Yeah. What do you think of the song Killer Klowns? We've lost the day of having original songs like this crafted for films.
God, I miss it. I didn't realize how much I missed it until I heard it. And it took me a minute to realize that it wasn't just another repurposed pop tune, like another, is this REO Speedwagon? No, it was.
That would be weird.
That would be weird. But it took me a minute. And so I missed it. And I forgot to look up the lyrics. Do you have the lyrics?
I don't have the lyrics. While you look for those, though, just say it's, they got the punk band the Dickies to actually perform, and they hadn't seen the film. They just wrote it based on the title, Killer Klowns from Outer Space. It's a really fun song that totally works for the film. It just has this fun vibe that gives it the energy that works well with the score. John Massari did the score, and also has just a really fun vibe to just the music that he created in it. I like the score. It has kind of that electronic, creepy, silly circus vibe.
So can I read just a selection from the lyrics?
Yes, of the lyrics, please.
P.T. Barnum said it so long ago. There's one born every minute, don't you know? Some make us laugh, some make us cry. These clowns only gonna make you die. Everybody's running when the circus comes to their towns. Everybody's gunning for the likes of the Killer Klowns from outer space. Killer Klowns from outer space. Chuckle! The ringmaster shouts, let the show begin. Send in the clowns, then let them do you in. See a rubber nose on a painted face, bringing genocide to the human race.
Those are freaking fantastic lyrics.
They're fantastic.
Yeah.
Later, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but later they actually work in diabolical bozos into the lyrics. What? Incredible. Incredible.
Yeah. Do you listen to much of the Dickies?
I had some of the Dickies when I was younger, and I didn't get into the straight up punk as much. And so I didn't have a lot of the Dickies, but I did have whatever was their most famous album. I'm sure I had that one.
The Incredible Shrinking Dickies?
Yeah, that would be it.
That was their first album, 1979. Dawn of the Dickies, Stukas over Disneyland, Second Coming.
No, it was
Idiot
Stukas over
Savant.
Disneyland. That's the one I had.
That was the one you had. Okay, that probably made more sense because that was 83, probably when you were getting more into their music and everything. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't have a real strong memory of the Dickies catalog, but that's funny.
That's the album where they did a cover of Communication Breakdown.
Yes.
It's a fun film. And as you were saying, it's like they knew what they were getting into. They're telling a film that feels so 80s. It's a story that taps into that vibe of the 50s. And it's freaking clowns. So, yeah, it's going to be incredibly goofy and silly. And they find the way to, I mean, if there's anything that you've brought up that I'm like, yeah, the balance of horror comedy, I think definitely skews toward the comedy, not as much of the horror. And they certainly could have gone farther down that road. But I don't know if it would have felt as much of like an 80s sort of film in that case, because that, like even the Critters, which isn't their film, they did the effects on it. It feels a little more on the scary side and still leans into the comedy here and there. But this, I don't know. I just think it's the clown element of it that they really just allow to let loose so that they can play with all of the clown jokes.
Yeah. And there are plenty. I mean, I think what's interesting about the film is that it does weirdly sort of transcend its like goofy nature, right? Given sort of when it was made, like at the end of the Cold War, and dealing with, like we talked about, the small town kind of vibe, the 1950s vibe, and yet dealing with this sort of anxiety that people were living with of existential extraterrestrial threats, infiltration and subversion of the mind virus as with the end, near the end of the Cold War. Like, there's just something to it, like that there is this thing that has infected us, and we think it's okay because it's a clown, but it's really destroying us. Like that's the worldview, the ideological worldview of this movie, and it is wildly punching above its class.
Yeah, really is. There are things that they could have played with. Like I was wondering when one of the Terenzi brothers, when they stop outside of the real circus, because they finally figured out in the plot, where would these characters go and hide, because their clown ship, the circus tent, is no longer out in the middle of the forest. And they're like, oh, of course, the circus or the carnival at the end of town. So they go down there, and that's where the cop had been disintegrated. And one of the Terenzi brothers goes, ooh, pie. And he sticks his fingers into it. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh, God, is he going to eat that? Oh, my God, is he about to eat this?
Is he going to die from the inside out? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, but nothing happens to his fingers, though. So that's why I was like, is it pie, like parts of it are pie and parts of it is acid? Like I couldn't quite figure that out. I don't know if we needed to.
It's a time release. It's a time release kind of time acting.
Right. But then I was also wondering, at the end of the film, after the big explosion and everything, all of our heroes look up into the sky and they all get covered in pie. And so I was wondering, and then we cut, and I'm like, did we cut because they're essentially now dissolved piles of bones and goo lying in the forest?
What do you think? What a controversial, uncertain ending, Andy. Who knew we'd get that kind of pivot in the last frame of this movie? Dude, our protagonist dead?
Yeah, it was so interesting because it's like a funny clown comedy joke. But knowing what has happened before, like I was convinced that like that was a ballsy way to end the movie, where they get covered in pie filling and then they're dead.
Yep. Totally agree.
Yeah.
I think they're all dead.
Yeah. Which it totally would make sense to me, which doesn't necessarily line up when we get to the sequels section of it. It doesn't necessarily completely line up, but I like to think that what we have here, that's the reality.
I'll take it. What else we got? Anything else?
Just a little side note, Christopher Titus pops up in here. This was his very first film. He's most known probably for his show Titus, which ran for 54 episodes. It was on the Fox network. It's just yet another in the line of sitcoms designed around a stand-up comedian. And he, because I mean that's mostly what he's known for these days is all the stand up that he does. He's had plenty of stand up performances and videos released of them. But yeah, this is where he got his start. He was the little guy. He was the guy at the beginning who had the glasses on in Lover's Lane.
Okay.
Who, when they find his vehicle, they open it up. His is the one that's full of all the cotton candy material.
And they find the glasses.
Yeah, they find his glasses, right. And just another side note, that vehicle, they did not, they just rented the vehicles for this, and they filled the inside of that with that goo material, and they ended up having to pay lots of money, lots more for the repair of that vehicle because it stained and ruined all of the interior of that Jeep.
Jesus.
And the other one, the guy who drives off the bridge, that was another rental, and they were intending it to like bump into something. They did not plan on it going off the bridge.
No way. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why we make movies, is to pay for our sins. Literally.
Yeah, right. I was thinking, I read that and I'm like, really though? Because they had to have some sense, because they would have to have had a stunt guy in the driver's seat. The camera is there filming it. Like, well, I don't know. I feel like that might be one of those stories where they've stretched in
a touch history. Apocryphal. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Anything else with this one?
No, I've got nothing else. I had a blast.
Lots of fun. Absolutely fun. All right. Well, we'll be right back. But first, our credits.
The Next Reel is a production of True Story FM, engineering by Andy Nelson, music by Francesco D'Andrea, the Victor Dance Orchestra, Oriel Novella, and Eli Catlin. Andy usually finds all the stats for the awards and numbers at the-numbers.com, boxofficemojo.com, imdb.com, and wikipedia.org. Find the show at truestory.fm, and if your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, please consider doing that for our show.
You ever have one of those days where you feel like you've stumbled into the twisted universe of Killer Klowns from outer space? You know, just going about your business, proudly sporting your Next Reel t-shirt, sweatshirt, or hoodie featuring a design from a streetcar named Desire, when suddenly you're surrounded by grotesque, otherworldly creatures that resemble clowns, but with a sinister twist. Yeah, me too. But here's the thing. As a diehard film fan and proud member of the Next Reel community, you know that the key to surviving any cinematic encounter lies in the power of great movies. And luckily, you're armed with the ultimate weapon, your collection of Next Reel merch. As the clowns close in, ready to encase you in a cotton candy cocoon and drink you up like a human milkshake, you channel your inner Marlon Brando and bellow out a mighty Stella! Causing the creatures to recoil in confusion. They've never seen such raw, unbridled passion before, at least not outside of a Tennessee Williams play. Emboldened by your success, you reach for your Fast Times at Ridgemont High mug and take a sip of piping hot coffee. The caffeine courses through your veins, giving you the strength to face even the most nefarious of space clowns. You're like Sean Penn's Jeff Spicoli, ready to take on the world, or at least this demented circus. But the real ace up your sleeve? Your John Carpenter filmography phone case proudly displaying the director's iconic works. The mere sight of the Halloween mastermind's name is enough to send the clowns running in terror, like so many babysitters fleeing from Michael Myers. Of course, the clowns have their own tricks up their puffy sleeves. They start hurling popcorn at you. But this isn't your average movie theater snack. No. These popcorn seeds are actually their twisted alien offspring, ready to stick to your skin and grow into terrifying jack-in-the-box clown creatures that will attack you at every turn. But you're not going down without a fight. You reach for your trusty Akira Kurosawa filmography tote bag and start swinging, channeling the legendary director's samurai epics as you battle your way through the sea of killer popcorn. With each swing, you feel the power of cinema coursing through your veins, giving you the strength to face down even the most terrifying of obstacles. As you make your way to the bathroom, seeking refuge from the clown onslaught, you suddenly find yourself face to face with one of the popcorn creatures, sprouting from the very place you thought you'd be safe. But you're not just any ordinary film fan, you're a Next Reel diehard, and you've got the merch to prove it. You grab your relic wall art hanging proudly in the bathroom and use it as a shield against the clown creature's attack. The power of the horror classic flows through you, giving you the courage to face down this bathroom-dwelling beast and emerge victorious. And that's when it hits you. The real power of the Next Reel's merch lies not just in its ability to showcase your impeccable taste in film, but in its ability to connect you with a community of fellow movie lovers who understand the transformative magic of cinema. With your trusty t-shirts, mugs, phone cases, tote bags, wall arts, and more by your side, you know that you're never alone, even in the face of the most bizarre and terrifying of challenges. So as you stand triumphant over the vanquished clowns and their popcorn offspring, you can't help but feel a sense of pride. Not just in your victory, but in the knowledge that you're part of a tribe of film fans who know that the power of a great movie can overcome anything, even an intergalactic circus invasion. And who knows, maybe someday you'll be the one to introduce a fellow Next Reel fan to the weird, wild world of Killer Klowns from Outer Space. You'll spot their relic pin on their backpack, give them a knowing nod, and launch into a spirited discussion of the finer points of alien clown biology. Because that's what being part of the Next Reel community is all about. Sharing your love of cinema with others, one delightfully strange film at a time. So, next time you find yourself in a sticky situation, whether it's facing down a pack of killer clowns or simply navigating the everyday absurdities of life, just remember, with the Next Reel's merch, you've got the power of great cinema on your side. Head to thenextreel.com/merch and grab some gear today, because you never know when you might need to channel your inner movie hero and save the day. Or at least your own popcorn-besieged bathroom.
Sequels and remakes, Andy. Sequels and remakes. How many were there? What do I need to watch next?
Right? This is one. It would be really fun to see a sequel. Although it is one of those that it makes you worry, like, would they actually do an okay job with it? I just don't know. The Chiodo Brothers actually planned to release a requel titled Return of the Killer Klowns from Outer Space in 3D in 2012. Stephen Chiodo was to direct it, and his brother Charles would be a production designer on it. Grant Kramer, who starred in the original film as Mike Tobacco, said his character would return. Going to our point earlier about what happens to them after they're covered in pie at the end of the film, I guess that would go against the downer ending that we were talking about. When the clowns come back, Tobacco, who had been preparing for the return, he would end up teaming up with two young street performers to fight them off. He also said that there might be multiple sequels, each revolving around a character from the original movie. It was later reported that the release date was delayed. I guess there was already a Facebook page for the film that said it was in post-production. I don't know if those were just fans who had no idea what was going on, but apparently it's just never happened. At some point it said it was going to be in 2013, and then as of 2016, Stephen Chiodo was still saying that efforts to make more have shifted from planning one or more theatrical releases to actually focusing on television. He talked about a concept of a trilogy in 4 parts, with the original film being the first, saying, "We've got it all written out." Eventually, 2018, Sci-Fi Channel actually was in talks to make one or more sequels to it. And they were also going to do the Critters franchise, tap into that. So I don't know what's happened with it, but clearly it's something that there's been a lot of talk and discussion. What's interesting, though, and it makes sense that toys, action figures have been made of the clowns. They stopped, the license expired in 2017, and now it's very expensive if you want to find yourself one of the little killer clown action figures.
Like, how expensive? Did you find one?
I didn't actually look, but I just read that they're very high-end collectors, much sought after. And interestingly, Universal Studios has latched onto the Killer Klowns concept, and they've actually used it as a theme in several of their Halloween horror nights. Starting in 2018, they did it in 2019, and it returned in 2022. So it's popular. And most recently, 2024, there was the video game release, Killer Klowns from Outer Space, the game, which was an asymmetrical multiplayer game.
Okay, I like it. A number of places still seem to have them. Killer Klowns, I don't think they're the originals. They're like $20, $30. But then you get into the, here's the Killer Clown from Outer Space Premiere Series Jumbo Quarter Scale for $789.
Yeah, that sounds like the ones, yeah.
That's a thing. They're so great, though, right? Like, you can totally I totally get why these would make for brilliant collectibles. They're awesome.
I mean, they're fantastic designs. Like the clowns, like from the little popcorn seedling ones to just like the giant ones, they're all just absolutely fantastic designs. It's so creepy. It's just such a great concept.
Wow. Really, really great. Oh, well, tell me it won some awards for best production design, character design.
You know, it should have won some design or some awards for sure. It was nominated for 2, and of course at the Saturn Awards, we love talking about them, the Sci-Fi, Horror, and Fantasy Awards. It was nominated for Best Music, but lost to Hellbound Hellraiser 2, and it was nominated for Best Costumes, but lost to Willow. I'm kind of surprised that those are the only things it was nominated for. It seems like something that should have had a few more, at least in just all of the creative aspects of the film, because it's just pretty remarkable.
You know, you can get them as Funko Pops, too.
Oh, my gosh.
How to do at the box office? To make any money?
Well, the Chiodo Brothers Clown Fest had a good-sized budget for what they were doing, $1.8 million, or $4.8 million in today's dollars. The movie opened May 27th, 1988, and from what I can tell, it wasn't a limited release. That being said, the only box office info shows that it grossed $393 domestically. Yeah. And $352 internationally for a total gross of $745 or $1,997 in today's money.
Do you look askance at your data ever?
Yeah, right. I know. Like, this is one of those times I'm like, what? No, I just can't even believe it. But honestly, you never know. I know there are films that do get released and only end up making, they only end up
dollars.
In a couple theaters and they're making dollars. Yeah. So if it is true, this lands the film with an adjusted loss per finished minute of almost $55,000. Still not the biggest adjusted loss per finished minute on our list, but certainly the worst performing we've discussed, for which we actually have financial info.
It's outstanding.
Yeah. I guess maybe that would tie into why they didn't get anything else off the ground.
Yeah. It sounds like it. Netflix should pick this up. This should be a thing. They take it super seriously and give us 10 parts. And it just shows the deconstruction of humanity at the hands of the clowns. I would watch the hell out of that.
There's an audience. There is an audience for it.
Yeah.
I will say, going back to our actors just real briefly, John L. Nelson, the young cop, was probably the most soapy soap opera of actors that we had in our cast. And if anyone else does bring it back, I do hope that we still get some pretty bad kind of soap acting, because that was a big part of my enjoyment in the film.
Look, Andy, here's the problem, because I have your actor for you, but he popped already. And just barely. It's Glenn Powell. This would have been a perfect Glenn Powell vehicle like 10 years ago.
Yeah. God, he would have been great as our young cop.
Amazing as our young cop. God, I would give.
Yeah, right?
Anyway,
man,
that's what
Lots of fun with this one. Wild, crazy movie. I had an absolute blast.
Me too.
All right. Well, we'll be right back for our ratings, but first, here is the trailer for next week's movie ending the series, Wendell B. Harris Jr.'s Chameleon Street.
Some people call me Mr. Wonderful. Other people call me William Douglas Street Jr. Born in a log cabin in the backwoods of Kentucky, young Douglas soon elevated himself from field hand to tiger, from tiger to reporter, and from reporter to doctor, from doctor to co-ed, from co-ed to attorney, from attorney to congressman. When I meet somebody, I know within the first 2 minutes who they want me to be. I need some money.
Make some money.
I mean, I could sit here and make you think you're a genius for correctly analyzing this complex, exotic, notorious Negro.
You know that the white man runs this world? I'm a victim of 400 years of conditioning.
Your credentials are just too amazing to believe.
What would you concoct such a licentious, low-down lie?
I wanted to get the money.
Open your mouth.
This is all just a vacation to you, isn't it?
Prison, a vacation. People ask me if I regret what happened. Sure, I regret it, but you can take my word for it. It's an unforgettable experience. I think, therefore I scan. I know not what I am. I am Chameleon Street.
Hi there. Ever find yourself, just enjoying a crisp autumn apple? The way the juice runs down your chin, that satisfying crunch. It's the simple things, isn't it? Like curling up with a good book, getting lost in a story, feeling that connection to the human experience. We'll throw it all out the window because at Bozo's Bonkers Big Top Academy, we don't have time for simple or human. We're here to clown. Are you tired of the mundane, the predictable, the crushing weight of societal expectations? Do you yearn for a life less ordinary, where the rules of physics are mere suggestions and a pie in the face is a gesture of affection? Then embrace the chaos! Join Bozo's Big Bonkers Big Top Academy and say goodbye to everything you hold dear. Say goodbye to personal space, to quiet contemplation, to the luxury of blending in with a crowd. At Bozo's, you'll learn the ancient art of physical comedy from the masters. You'll juggle chainsaws, tame unruly rubber chickens, and perfect the art of the perfectly timed pratfall. You'll discover hidden talents you never knew you possessed, like fitting your entire body into a tiny car, or communicating solely through the honking horns and unintelligible gibberish. So what are you waiting for? Trade in your sensible shoes for oversized clown boots and swap your sophisticated vocabulary for a symphony of squeaks and honks. Bozo's Big Top Academy, where your sanity checks out and your inner clown checks in.
Applications are open now. Scholarships available. Therapy not included.
Wait a second. You're not a clown. You're just trying to clown around with some other movie fiends, just like you. That's why you need to head over to truestory.fm/join and join the community supporting the Next Reel family of film podcasts. Get bonus episodes and content, early access, a standing invitation to join the live stream chats when we record, ad-free versions of our shows, and access to the super secret channels on our Discord community. Mostly, you'll know you're supporting our shows and the team that keeps them coming every week, just as we've been doing since 2011. Thank you for your support. Back to the show! Letterboxd, Andy, letterboxd.com/thenextreel. That's where you can find our HQ page. You can find all our reviews for our the movies that we talked about on this show. What are you going to do for your star rating?
I mean, I had so much fun with this film. It still is, there's low budget elements of it and some acting and stuff, but it's one of those ones that's just so easy to watch and a smile on my face the whole time. This is one where I feel like, does this fall into my, I feel like so many movies like this for me fall into like that 3.5 star window, which generally works well to cover these sorts of films. And I feel like that's where I'm going. I'm tempted to say 4 just because I had so much fun with it, but I think I'm going to stick with 3.5 and a heart. It's a big heart though.
It's a big heart. I was going to go 3, but hearing your vacillation between 3.5 and 4 and having so much fun talking about it and just wanting to be a half star better than you generally, I'm going to go 4 stars and a heart on this one. It's a movie that just so successfully does what it sets out to do. I could look at these disgusting clowns all day long.
You now need to add that to your bio on our website. Just at the bottom of it, also a half star better than Andy. Oh man, so funny. Well, this was a lot of fun. That will round out to 3 3/4 plus a heart, which will be 4 stars over on Letterboxd. You can find me there at Soda Creek Film. You can find Pete at Pete Wright, and you can find the show at The Next Reel. So, what did you think about Killer Klowns from Outer Space? We would love to hear your thoughts on this one. Hop into the Show Talk channel over on our Discord community, where we will be talking about the movie this week.
When the movie ends,
our conversation begins. Come on down, the bozos. Let's go.
Your inner clown checks in.
Oh my gosh.
Letterbox giveth, Andy.
As Letterboxd doeth.
It does.
Always.
It doeseth. Always.
Sorry.
It often doeseth.
I was like, I forgot.
Totally,
why does that sound
totally
wrong?
threw me. It sounds wrong.
As Letterboxd always doeth.
Okay, so where did you go? What'd you do?
I went high a number of reviews. It's actually the second most liked review on Letterboxd.
Oh, okay.
I know.
What is it?
3.5 by Karsten, very popular over there. Definitely should be on more of those 1001 movies you need to see before you die lists. I couldn't agree more, Karsten.
That's it? That's the whole review?
That's the whole review.
It's an advocacy review. I get it. Yeah. No, it's perfect. Mine is actually dedicated to you and to Brian in the chat room. Here you go.
Okay.
Are you ready? It's a 2.5 stars from Ethan Colburn, who says, would this movie benefit from a central protagonist and a cohesive plot? Yes. Would I change a thing about it? No. Who is the central protagonist, Andy?
Well, just because I always like to look at the central protagonist and everything doesn't mean filmmakers always do that. And this is one of those films where it's a little sloppy in how the construction works. Because is it our cop? I don't know if Dave's the protagonist. He is sometimes, or is it Mike? Sometimes.
Is it Debbie? Well, then she gets into a balloon.
Yeah, I don't think it's Debbie.
Kidding?
She becomes the one they have to save.
It should be Shorty the Clown. That's who it should be. I want the entire movie retold as from Shorty's POV.
Yeah. No, so it is tricky. Yeah, it's one of those tricky ones.
Essential clown cinema. Outstanding. Thanks, Letterboxd.